Hey there, everybody. This is, I guess, our late afternoon edition of Big Brother 22 All Stars. We are in day 29. The campaigns are, I don't want to say they're heating up. It's kind of more like you've sort of put something in the oven at like 200 degrees, hoping it'll just warm up enough so it doesn't get cold.
Yeah, it's not really super heating up.
No, but we'll talk about the campaigning that's
Whoop.
going on, and Coco Vanderwolf is already kind of on the move here.
She's over me.
Well, she moves around a lot. She gets over me like 10 seconds into these. But we'll also tell you about the Slick Six meeting that happened minus Dani seemingly while the feeds were down last night. And also some possible targets for the future. Who would Bailey potentially nominate? Before we dive into any of this, if you guys do like this video, let us know by giving us a like, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell, and support us further. Check out our store, check out our Patreon. We do live chats over there at the last Sunday of every month.
All right, let's talk about this Slick Six meeting. It is very interesting that they allegedly all met without Dani, and a lot of people have been upset with Dani. And I was saying earlier that I thought that maybe the only person that might be able to help smooth things out for Dani is Nicole. It's just not happening just yet. But if anyone's going to save Dani's game at this point, or at least clue her in that she needs to reel it back, it is going to end up being Nicole, because Dani's in trouble.
She's in big trouble. And if I'm sort of just thinking about, okay, who are the possible sort of targets coming up? Maybe you have Dani. Maybe you are in some weird situation because of what Ian is trying to do with Kevin, where Cody or Nicole could be there. Maybe it's Bailey or Davon. But it really was just a matter of a couple of days ago when there were serious conversations about whether or not Enzo was going to go through on this before Mr. Big Move Enzo became sort of the cowardly lion, just afraid of his own shadow, just wandering around and being like, courage, where's my courage?
What I find the most interesting about this is I had thought that the Slick Six was kind of a BS alliance, and it still might be, but feels a little more solid now that they actually went through meeting together without Dani to sort of talk about her.
I feel like what it kind of is I think really the Ian Octopus thing is really kind of it at this point, where you have like maybe a tiny group of people, maybe it's really Cody and Enzo, or it's Cody and Nicole or whatever. And I think sort of beyond that, a lot of these people are just looking at these larger groups as just sort of like, it is what it is. We'll kind of roll with this right now. And I think the Slick Six, because there are things turning against Dani, it makes some sense for the other people to be sort of solid, just in case Dani does go. They can sort of move forward and be quote unquote unified, or as unified as they're going to be, given we talked about the possible fight between Tyler and Cody moving forward.
Yeah, there's some things that are starting to kind of fall apart. And Kaser brought up something interesting to Kevin just about this idea that he thinks that there are two bigger alliances that are kind of morphing in and out of each other, with sort of one or two people that are in either both of them or are going back and forth. And Cody was one of the names that came up, which is the truth. He is in these two major alliances and is trying to manage both of them. But he is also right now just super irritated, and he has been for a few days now, and things are starting to bubble over.
I think sooner or later they will really get to that point where the water is just running everywhere and nobody knows how to really clean up the mess. And it could be this coming week if the right person wins HOH. If not, then we are at a point where if Kaser goes, and Kaser probably going to go, let's be honest here, it's just going to be a situation where there's no clear individual target anymore. And I know we've all been irritated with a lot of Big Brother 22 so far, and trust me, I get it, but I'm holding on to just a tiny bit of hope here in Unicorn Land that the drama is coming, and it is coming fast.
Well, what is interesting about the drama in general is that it is no longer really a big alliance against sort of the Kevins or the Ians or the Davids even on the other side of the house. There really isn't any of that, because it is really these two big alliances that have all their tentacles out, and everybody that's left is all part of this now. So what ends up really happening? And a lot of this is going to be exposed, especially if Cody wins, because Cody is in all of the alliances. So while Cody might be irritated and ready to kind of make a couple moves, him winning the HOH this week might not be in his best interest if he wants to show his hand.
This is where things get fascinating. All right, Devil Horns activated. Here we go. Cody, he is working with almost everyone. So what if there was a situation here where Cody is like, you know what, I don't want to tip my hand, I don't want to win HOH, and then he ends up throwing it to somebody like an Ian, and then Ian pulls off the move of getting Cody on the block.
Yeah, and Ian has been trying to kind of work Cody over the past few days to suggest that maybe he's got Cody's back, throw him the HOH, he'll make sure that he's taken care of. Taken care of is where we're really looking at it, right?
The funny thing just about this whole situation is everything is so unpredictable, ironically, except for the one thing that's actually relevant today and tomorrow, which is Kaser's eviction. Watching Kaser campaign to Kevin, it is the ultimate, like, there's a gif that's popular right now of the man just sort of like talking to the brick wall and the brick wall is doing nothing. Kaser, he could be saying, Kevin, I have right here a magical golden key that won't just get you a couple weeks, will get you to the final two. And I feel like Kevin would still be like, nah, Kaser, you're going home. Take that golden key with you. Like, that's where it is with Kaser's campaign now.
Yeah, and that makes sense because there just isn't the votes there. Even if he had an Ian and a Kevin and Davon and Bailey, it's not enough. He needs to turn some of the rest of the house, and they're not going to budge.
My favorite moment from the feeds this afternoon was after this conversation, this campaign effort between Kaser and Kevin. Kaser goes to Ian. Ian asks how it went, and he says, useless.
Yeah.
Kaser is aware.
He's aware.
He's trying to campaign. Apparently, he's not even going to bother campaigning to Cody and Nicole. Big shocker there, but he's still going to have some conversations. Christmas, breaking news, has committed herself to go and try to solidify her votes further as well.
Which is good. I mean, this is something we talked about a little bit earlier, that it's a really smart move for her not to just sit back and not campaign and not act like she's not worried, because then she tips her hand that her and Enzo are working together.
There are now, because this week is so predictable, like there are now a number of interesting players moving forward that are really important for us to kind of keep our eyes on. And, one of them is Christmas. I mean, we've talked throughout the day about she's playing a pretty good game, but nobody really seems to know exactly who she's with, what she's doing, and that could prove troublesome for certain people who maybe want to trust her, i.e. Kevin, moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, we all know she's close with Enzo and she's close with Tyler. It seems that she's also becoming a bit closer with Dani, and that the two of them are getting frustrated at Bailey, and Bailey is also getting frustrated a bit with them because she was talking to Davon a bit, saying that her and Christmas used to be fine, where they were kind of sharing the same room and everything was cool and they were really relaxed with each other, and that more so lately she thinks maybe Dani's been getting in her ear, because when nowadays she tries to just like, hey, how's it going? So what do you think is going to happen this week? And Christmas will be more defensive. Well, what do you think is going to happen this week? And Bailey has noticed the change, that it's just not as casual and friendly as it was.
It's also ironic here because that conversation happens with Bailey and Davon, and then you've got this afternoon Christmas and Dani sort of airing out their frustrations about Bailey, and it just feels like, if I'm being honest, that it's a weird false narrative that they have going on, that like she's been somewhat rude to them, or it's like I've watched a lot of Bailey on the live feeds this season, and I think by and large, like I have found her to be in one of the better spirits out of the people that are in the game. She hasn't been anywhere near as cranky as Cody has been over the past couple of days.
Or Memphis, who's also been really cranky. I mean, Bailey's been having a pretty good game. So it is a very weird narrative that's coming out that feels like it's mostly coming out from Dani, and that she has been in Christmas's ear, because I don't remember Christmas and Bailey really having these kinds of problems early on. They did seem to be pretty chill.
I think it's all just a symptom of Dani at this point. Is I think she's so eager to try to get something happening, to make a move, to plot ahead, because they're all bored. They've all been in this situation knowing Kaysar's going for a long time, that they're setting themselves up for a little bit of trouble, because I think these are conversations Dani, she doesn't need to have them right now. You don't know who the next HOH is. You've already had talks about maybe splitting up Bailey and Devon. I don't think you need to nail the point home a million times.
And because we all know that Dani is in huge trouble, I mean, so many people are talking about getting Dani out, and Dani hasn't heard anything about it. And at this point, Nicole knows about it. She knows that people are frustrated with Dani, and she also hasn't really said very much about it at this point. So I do think that Nicole is going to have to just let Dani go.
There are two things in this house right now that they're just ticking away. That Dani one is one, and obviously what Ian has discovered about Nicole and Cody being the top of the octopus, or whatever, the head of the octopus, whatever, some part of the octopus, that doesn't really come out either, and there's been opportunities for it to, and it hasn't.
Yeah, it's also still, like, we've had Bailey went and talked to Enzo, and she didn't say anything about it. Like, all four of them are keeping this quiet. So it feels like they all know how valuable this information is. And as soon as they figure out who's this next HOH, if it's one of the four of them, they will deal with it. Bailey has already said that if she wins, she is nominating Nicole in Christmas.
They're fascinating nominations. Like, I've tried in my head to sort of think about, okay, who would actually go in this position, because there is a part of me that's like, okay, you can't nominate Nicole with Christmas. You got to put her up with a Cody or something. But it is, Cody's a part of the Slick Six. You got to find a way to try to at least preserve the false narrative of this alliance, even if you're not super loyal to it. But maybe Nicole actually would end up going if there are a lot of people that are kind of sort of like, we do want to work with Christmas. We do value her. We know Tyler values her.
Or we just don't want to give Nicole the 2-time win. So if we can get her on the block, great, bye. Yeah. And they'll just deal with it. Because there are a lot of people like Enzo who are pretty nervous about her. He said he's afraid of her because she is really well insulated. That maybe this is the time to just get rid of her.
It all goes back to what Kevin said earlier about Nicole. We talked a lot about Kevin's monologue earlier.
Yep.
I don't think we talked about Nicole, and one of the things that he said, and for all of the just junk that I have said about Kevin, he has nailed this one to a T, that Nicole, she's much, much smarter than she tries to let on, and she tries to pull on this sort of like, oh, shucks, I can't do anything sort of like demeanor in the house, and it's all acting, and she knows what her image is, and she's very good at preserving that image, and that is why she's so threatening. It's why she is as good of a player as she is, because she can play that out there, and people will fall for it. So if you have this opportunity, and if Bailey has this opportunity, you gotta take her out here. Christmas is not as threatening in the long term of this game.
It is so weird to me with Nicole and how many times she has played this exact same game and has won playing this aw shucks game, that anybody is falling for this. And I understand the whole idea that there was pre-game alliances and whatever, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to really buy into it once they're in the house. They can still work with her, but they don't have to actually buy into this, and people are. It's weird.
I don't know if it's like she has like an aura of influence. She is an influencer, but I don't know if it's that, or it's just they put too much stock in the pregame, or whatever it is. Maybe she just is a very good sort of friendly person to people who meet her in this environment, where she may not be someone we always root for on the outside, but maybe it's different if you're having a conversation in there. I don't know.
It may also just be that it's difficult to call someone out while they're crying, to say your BS while there are tears running down somebody's face. It is not the time to do that. But I did think that there would be more conversation sort of on the sly about the fact that that is part of her game and she has done it twice before and now she's doing it a third time. That, okay, you know, yeah, we're working with her, but we got to make sure we don't fall into this trap.
Just put her up. If you put her up, guess what? She's already on the block. Don't tell her in advance. Don't give her a chance to sort of fight back. Just put her up, see what happens. It's a long week. If she comes off, put somebody else up. There are options, but I think we're going to have an interesting next 24 hours or so. Not so much for Kaser, but maybe we'll get some signs as to what can happen with the HOH and a whole lot more.
And more with Kevin. I have been enjoying Kevin with the feeds today and yesterday. He really is starting to be more of the Kevin that I remember, where he is a little more information gathering and scheming and figuring some things out. I mean, I know he's working really closely with Devon. He's even warned her that she might end up sort of looking like this pawn if she doesn't start winning comps, and he's trying to protect her because that's his number one. And he is starting to finally find a little bit of his footing. It's just, is it too late? Maybe not, because these two big alliances, it's crackling.
Kevin, be the comeback kid that we want you to be. Yes, people won't forget about what you did to Janelle and Kaser early on in the game, but still, there's hope. But we'll wrap this up. But for now, who do you think the next target is going to be once Kaser inevitably leaves? Who are you rooting for to be HOH? Give us your thoughts in the comments, and if you do like this video, give us a like, subscribe, support us further. Check the links in the description to the store, our Patreon, and we'll see you here next time.